Alright, Meat Shields, check this one out. It's been almost 30 years since the Rage virus spread across the UK, turning everyone into bloodthirsty zombies with the uncontrollable urge to kill. Cut off from the outside world, the survivors were left to fend for themselves. And now this kid Spike is about to set off on the most dangerous mission of his life. But the island still has its secrets, and the zombies are somehow only getting stronger. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Rage zombies in 28 years later. This kid is about to have the most traumatizing day of his life. It's a quiet morning somewhere in the Scottish Highlands, and a young boy named Jimmy is peacefully watching Teletubbies with his family. Just then, they hear a commotion in the hallway that sounds like the adults arguing about something, but his aunt tells them to stay quiet and keep watching TV. The noises start getting worse until they can hear the sounds of people screaming, and when he can't ignore it any longer, he nervously goes to the door and asks for his dad. Just then, a group of infected neighbors crash through the door and start going after everyone in the room, forcing Jimmy to run for his life. He almost makes it to the kitchen, but sees his mom being torn apart behind the glass door. And upstairs, he finds more of his family members starting to transform. Somehow he makes it out of there and sprints across the street to the church where his father serves as minister. Inside, he finds the man praying in front of the altar, but strangely, he's convinced that the outbreak is a good thing. Taking off his cross necklace, he gives it to the boy just as the infected begin to swarm the building and lets them all surround him while Jimmy hides underneath the floor, waiting until they're gone before escaping into the countryside. Alright, I'm no psychologist, but I can tell you this much. That kid ain't never gonna look at the Teletubbies the same way again. Now, in case you haven't noticed, this world's version of the infected are not your typical run-of-the-mill like George Romero type zombies. And first off, they're not even dead. They're infected with the Rage virus, which is a highly contagious, bloodborne pathogen that turns their aggression up to the absolute max. And since their muscles haven't degraded, they can still climb over obstacles, crash through barriers, and run after you with the speed of a human cheetah. Now, even though they're driven by the uncontrollable urge to kill, they still maintain some level of intelligence, meaning they can recognize threats and think strategically. And the worst part is, the virus spreads quickly, needing only 10 to 20 seconds after contact before it completely takes over. But since they're still biologically human, they have all the same weaknesses as a regular person, and this means that you don't need a headshot to take them down. Regular hits, they'll still work. They just ignore the pain until their bodies give out. Now, at the start of the outbreak, your first goal isn't to fight, it's to survive, and during the first 48 hours, the outside world is going to become a total death trap, so if you're caught off guard with no time to evacuate, then you need to lock down the house and shelter in place. So, I would start by locking all the doors and windows and barricading them up with as much furniture as possible, and at the same time, we need to turn on the bathtub and sink and start stockpiling water, because it won't be long before they shut that shit off. We also need to shut off all the lights and electronics because we don't want any humans or other infected knowing that we're home. Then it's time to move up to the second floor and barricade the steps. If you've got an attic, then even better. Get up there and pull the ladder up behind you. It's also a never bad idea to grab a weapon, and the best choice would be a blunt object with some good reach, like a cricket bat or something like that. Then all you have to do is stay absolutely silent until you're sure that the worst is over. Now, as for Jimmy's family, they should have immediately moved the kids to the highest point of the house, and then started defending the place using all the steps that we just talked about, because there's nothing worse than starting off the zombie apocalypse by becoming an orphan. It's now been 28 years since the start of the outbreak, and a community of survivors managed to stay alive on a small island just off the coast, where they're protected by a causeway that disappears with the tides. One morning, a young boy named Spike wakes up and starts getting ready for the day. Now, normally he'd be on his way to school, but today is different because his father Jamie is taking him to the mainland for the first time. He finds the man in the kitchen making them an early breakfast, but upstairs they hear his mother Ilsa struggling in her bed. She's been suffering from a mysterious illness that's only getting worse, but without a doctor on the island, there's not much that they can do to treat her condition. His mother gets upset when she hears what the two of them have planned, shouting at her husband that it's way too dangerous. But after calming down, she quickly loses her train of thought and forgets what they're about to do, and Spike lies that he's just going to school. Going back downstairs, he finds their neighbor Sam waiting for him with a handmade bow. As they make their way through town, the other survivors all come to see them off, cheering them on like heroes as they head for the gate. gate. When they reach the edge of the fence, they find the village elders waiting for them with some final words of advice. Their leader, Jenny, warns them that they can't send any help if something goes wrong, so if they're not back by nightfall, they're kind of on their own. With that, the guards open the gate and the two of them set off on their first mission, but that's about to be their biggest mistake. As they cross the causeway, Jamie makes his son explain how the bridge works. The kid replies that they can only cross during low tide, when it's not covered by water. Otherwise, the strong current will drag them out to sea. Okay, these two are already heading for trouble, and after surviving for 28 years like this, it's surprising to see them making so many mistakes. Like, first of all, it needs to be said that Spike's mom is right. He's way too young for a mission like this. And I'm not just saying that because he still plays with Power Rangers. At 12 years old, his brain's fear center is hyperactive, making him more likely to panic or freeze under pressure. And we can't forget, he's just a kid, so he won't have the speed, strength, or stamina required to keep up with somebody who's even 2 to 3 years older. So like the elder said, they should be waiting until he's at least 14 before sending him out to play The Last of Us in real life. But since Dad here insists on going for it anyway, they need to make sure they're better prepared. Now before leaving, they each filled up a 32-ounce water bottle for the trip. That might be enough for a short hike, but they're heading into a dangerous environment where like anything could happen. So with that being said, they should really be carrying 2 bottles each, plus a metal cup with some fire starter so that they can boil water on the main land. Next, onto their choice of weapons, because bows and arrows are great until they're not. They're excellent choice for long-range engagements, but if they run out of ammo or things get up close and personal, they'll need a backup melee weapon to give them a fighting chance. Since Dad is stronger, he can take a heavy weapon with a good stopping power. The ideal choice would be something like a crowbar, allowing him to rock zombies in the head and also use it as a multi-tool for opening doors. Otherwise, a machete or modded baseball bat are pretty good runner-ups. For Spike, he needs something lightweight and agile, like a tomahawk or a hatchet. Those are light enough for him to swing without getting tired, but strong enough to deal some good damage, and they also provide some extra utility in a pinch. And last but not least, they should really be wearing some PPE, because all it takes is 1 drop of blood to get into your system before you're totally screwed. At bare minimum, they should each have safety goggles to protect their eyes, a mask or bandana for their nose and mouth, gloves, and thick clothing that covers every inch of skin with duct-taped sleeves and pants to seal off any openings. It doesn't take much, but with a few small improvements, they'd have a much better chance of making it back alive. It's a long walk until they reach the other shore, and as they enter the forest, they come to a large area that's been cleared for firewood. Reaching the top of a hill, Spike is amazed by how big the outside world really is, but his father explains that their little village is the only safe place left in the entire country. Eventually, they come to a dip in the ground where they can see one of the zombies at the bottom of the hill. There's a slow low, a bloated variety that's much slower than your average infected, but Jamie warns his son that they're still extremely dangerous. Now it's Spike's turn to put the creature out of its misery, and taking aim, he lets an arrow fly straight into its neck. It's a perfect shot, and the zombie lets out a blood-curdling scream as it collapses to the ground. But the man spins around just in time to see another one sneaking up behind them. Putting an arrow through its chest, he turns around and drops a third one just as it starts running towards them, and the others flee into the forest without giving them any more trouble. Jamie tells the boy that he did a good job, but they have to keep moving before the sound draws more infected to their position. Up ahead, they reach another clearing where a massive herd of deer goes running by, and they stop to take a look. And that's when the father notices an abandoned house at the top of a nearby hill. Going to check it out, they start searching the place for anything useful, but the only thing they find is an old frisbee. Just then, they hear a loud noise coming from the next room and turn to see a dead body strung up to the ceiling by its feet. The dad makes Spike have a look when suddenly the body starts flailing around, revealing that it's been infected. It seems like somebody did this to him on purpose, but there's no telling why. And stepping back, the man orders his son to finish it off. Nervous, the kid hesitates until the body breaks loose, but as it gets up to charge them, he finally puts an arrow straight through its head. When it's over, his dad compliments him on a job well done, but the experience leaves the kid feeling traumatized in a way that he can't explain. Alright, pause. Let's get real for just 1 second. I don't know if you know this, but sometimes when I get really locked in, I start to think I'm actually living in a death game. Like this work has me so cooked that I bring my family members to the store with me in case I need a meat shield. I'm constantly paranoid that my little pup is actually a sinister robot clone.
I will destroy you.
Or sometimes I make my brother pretend to be me and he gets taken instead. And you know what? That's called burnout, baby! And I know I'm not alone in feeling it. In fact, most people from content creators to celebrities feel it from time to time, and the worst thing you could do is freaking ignore it. You know, thankfully I decided to use today's sponsor, BetterHelp, to talk to a therapist about my burnout, and it's really helping. A therapist is gonna listen, ask you questions, and help you see things from new perspectives. I mean, they can give you advice and techniques to make positive changes in your life, be it about burnout or any other struggles you might be having. BetterHelp's definitely on a mission to make starting therapy a lot easier. To get started, you download the app and fill out a questionnaire that is going to match you with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. And if the right match hasn't been found, you can switch easily, no extra cost. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform even your parents can trust. So click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/howtobeatyt and get 10% off your first month of therapy. I hope you guys can check it out, and with that, back to the show. Alright, these two are already making some dangerous mistakes, and they're gonna wind up dead if they don't change things pretty soon. Like, let's start by taking a look at their encounter with the Slow-Los, because it shows a major flaw in their strategy. Now, even though these things have the stealth level of a bulldozer, one of them almost managed to sneak up on Jamie and his son. The thing is, Jamie knows the infected never travel alone, so with that being said, they should make it a rule of thumb to never focus on the same target. If one of them has a zombie covered, the other should be watching their backs for an ambush. I mean, that way they'll never be caught off guard. Now, he also knew that the first kill would draw attention, so he should have already been prepared for more of them to show up. The average person takes around 1 full second to identify a threat, but you also have to factor in the extra time it takes to load an arrow, draw the bow, and fire with accuracy. In that 5-second window, a rage infected could cover anywhere from 50 to 100 feet depending on the terrain, meaning that they can easily close the distance before you're ready. But if he keeps his bow drawn and ready to fire, he'll save precious time that could mean the difference between life and death. Next, we need to talk about how they approached the abandoned house. Jamie saw it as a good place to loot for supplies, but that's the problem because other survivors can see this too. And like he said, there are strange people on the mainland, so you'd never really know if the house might turn out to be a trap. So before getting close, it's always safer to hide and watch the place for any signs of activity, either from the infected or from humans. This would give them time to take note of all the exit points and have an escape plan ready before they go in. Once they're ready, Jamie should go first while his son watches from cover. He could enter the house and then quickly sneak out through a back exit, allowing them to see if anyone comes to investigate. Now, once they're sure that it's safe, should they enter and look for supplies? Otherwise, the infected could turn out to be the least of their worries. As they're making their way back towards the island, they reach a place where the father notices some fresh blood on the leaves. At the bottom of the hill, they discover the mangled body of a dead deer, and the man explains that it must be the work of the fast ones. He doesn't seem worried until they find the animal's head stuck up in a tree a few feet away, but that's when everything changes. Knocking an arrow, he tells the boy that there must be an alpha nearby, and says that they need to get out of there right now. Almost back to the causeway, but as they start to cross the field, they notice a group of infected watching them from the top of the hill. That's when an even bigger shadow appears among the others, and Jamie tells his son to get back as he realizes that it's the alpha, but they've already been spotted, and the monster lets out a terrifying roar as it sends the others to chase after them. Their only real choice is to keep running back through the trees, stopping every few feet to take out as many zombies as they can. Jamie leads the way while his son backs him up, but the kid keeps missing his shots because of the pressure, and it's not going to be long before they're completely out of arrows. They finally make it back to the abandoned house with the zombies still chasing them down, and the man tells his son to get upstairs while he tries to hold them off. Desperately looking for somewhere to hide, the kid finds a place where they can climb up to the attic, but it's too high for him to reach on his own, and just at the last second they're able to climb up just as the rest of the horde closes in, watching through the floor as the zombies ransack the house. It looks like they're safe for now, but they won't be leaving anytime soon, and there's no chance of making it back to the village before the tide cuts them off. Back on the island, the other survivors are all preparing for a big celebration for Spike and his dad, having no idea that the two of them will not be coming back. Meanwhile, still trapped in the attic, they see the alpha standing on the hillside just waiting for them to come out. I mean, there's no way for them to fight back now that they're out of arrows, and Jamie explains that they wouldn't stand a chance even if they could. So it looks like they're stuck for now, and they're gonna have to wait until he's gone. Worried, Spike feels like it's his fault for cracking under the pressure, but his dad reassures him that he did the best that he could. Okay, well, it looks like this quick trip to the mainland just went full survival horror mode. They just ran into the only type of infected that Jamie actually fears, and now it has them trapped in an attic with no way out. Now first, we need to discuss the alphas and what makes them different from the others, besides the obvious. These big fellas are infected with a strain of the virus that acts like a power-up mushroom from Mario, taking everything that makes the regular infected deadly and putting it into maximum overdrive. The result is a zombie with enhanced size and strength and extreme resilience to physical trauma. They also show signs of increased intelligence, allowing them to understand their environment, think strategically, use tools, and even command other zombies like an army of foot soldiers. This all adds up to one dangerous so, like Jamie pointed out, they don't stand much of a chance against it in a fight, but that doesn't mean that they're completely screwed here. Like, think about it this way, right? We already know that the infected have to eat to survive, and they've been seen hunting the local wildlife for food. So, even though the alpha's still watching the house, he'll eventually have to leave in search of something to eat. And even if that's only temporary, that's their window to go. Now, they may be out of arrows, but that doesn't mean that they're out of options. They just have to get creative with the supplies that they have. Like, with a few adjustments, their bows could be turned into powerful melee weapons. First, remove the string, then look for a broom handle or metal pipe and use it to reinforce the center grip. Next, find a sharp object like a screwdriver, a kitchen knife, or a metal shard and attach it to one end. Then look for a blunt object like a wrench or a hammer and tie it to the other side, and voila! You've just created a double-ended polearm with crushing and stabbing potential. Now, as for the bowstring, we can use it to make a sling, but not like the kind you put on a sprained elbow. The kind that David used to slay Goliath when those two were beefing back in the day. In ancient times, these were powerful ranged weapons that could launch stones at over 100 miles per hour. Damn! So I'd take the bowstring and attach a pouch to hold the projectile, then search the attic for anything small but dense that they could use for ammo, like marbles or ball bearings, or even plain old rocks. It's not quite as good as an old 12 gauge, but it's reliable, silent, and could save their ass in a pinch. Later that night, Jamie spots a patrol boat off the coast of the island, but there's nothing anyone can or would do to help them out. Off in the countryside, Spike notices a giant bonfire burning in the distance, and his father pretends like he doesn't know what it is. But the kid can tell that he's hiding something from the way that he dodges the question. After falling asleep, they're startled awake when the massive herd of deer comes stampeding past the house, causing the place to start crumbling down all around them. Moving quickly, Jamie drags his son out of the attic with only seconds to spare, and they escape just as the house almost collapses on top of their heads. But the danger is not over yet. He knows more infected will be drawn to the sound, but enough time has passed that they should be able to reach the island. So telling his son to keep moving no matter what happens, they set off back towards the coast as fast as they can. They're able to make it all the way back to the beach without running into any trouble, and thinking that they're home free, they start making their way across the flooded bridge. Jamie's already counting it as a successful mission, but they're only about halfway across when a massive flock of crows appears in the sky above their heads. Following the birds, the Alpha tracks them down and hits the water without missing a step, barreling down on them with the speed of an Olympic sprinter. Turning around, Spike sees the beast closing in, and his dad tells the kid to run for it as they start racing for the gate. The boy's completely exhausted, but the Alpha isn't slowing down, and he's gaining on them more and more with every step. Over in the watchtower, the guards hear them coming and get to their positions, shouting for the two of them to get down as they fire a volley of arrows straight over their heads. Few of them hit the Alpha square in the chest, but it's only enough to briefly knock him down before he gets back on his feet. Just when it looks like they're done for, the guards launch a flaming ballista bolt straight through the monster's heart, and it's finally enough to kill it for good. Even with the Alpha down, Jenny makes them wait until she's positive they aren't infected, but once she's finally satisfied, she orders the guards to open the gate and let them in. Alright, that was a pretty damn close call, and while these two were busy running for their lives, it got me thinking about like a major flaw in their strat. We learned earlier that the island is protected by this causeway that disappears during the high tide. I mean, it's great for keeping the infected out, but it also creates a problem where stranded survivors can only come back during specific windows. Now, what they need is a small raft on the mainland side of the causeway, which can be linked to the island with a sturdy cable or rope, allowing any survivors who end up stranded to pull themselves back to the village. while also eliminating the risk of them being followed by a pack of infected. Simple enough, right? But you see, there's another problem, because whenever it's shallow enough for us to cross, that means the infected can cross too, and can easily snowball into a full-blown catastrophe if they aren't careful. Right now, their only true line of defense is the village's main gate, meaning they only get one chance to stop whatever's coming, so they need to find a way to upgrade their defense strategy so this won't happen again. For example, the causeway already has several gates that serve as waypoints, but we need to convert those into actual metal gates that can be dropped by someone as they run past, or activated with a lever from the nearest guard tower, with spiked reinforcements along the lower edge to slow down any infected that are trying to break through. Next to each gate, they should build a guard tower on stilts with a ladder that can be pulled up, and stock it with weapons like bows and spears. This way, you can have guards posted along the causeway, and any survivors being chased can reach high ground without having to make it all the way back to the village. Oh yeah, and last but not least, the final 20 feet of the path should be flanked with an elevated dock on each side, where archers and ballista teams can fire down from multiple angles, creating a final kill zone as their last line of defense. Then everyone can sleep soundly at night knowing that there's no chance of a single infected getting through. The others put on a huge party to celebrate their safe return, and Jamie brings his son up on stage to tell everyone how it went, exaggerating the story to make it seem like way more badass than it actually was. This gets the crowd good and fired up, and as the beer starts flowing, Spike notices his father sneaking away with one of the neighbors. Eventually the kid goes outside for some fresh air, only to see the old man cheating on his mom while he thinks that nobody is watching. Traumatized, the kid rushes back home to be with his mom, finding their neighbor Sam asleep in the kitchen. As he's telling the story of their adventure, he mentions seeing a huge fire somewhere in the countryside. And to his surprise, the old man knows exactly what he's talking about. He says that it might have been a man named Kelson, a doctor who went insane at the start of the outbreak. But when the kid presses him for more info, he refuses to tell him anything else. In fact, it isn't until the next morning when the boy's father drunkenly stumbles into the house. While he's making breakfast, the kid decides to confront him, asking why he never told them about Dr. Kelson. It turns out that many years ago, he was on a supply run when they stumbled across Kelson's property, and what they saw there left him scarred for life. The man had gathered hundreds of bodies by the river and was feeding them one by one into the bonfire. They never dared go anywhere near the property since, and that's why he's never considered asking the man to help his wife. Refusing to give up, the kid insists that they need to try something, and that's when he brings up what he saw outside the party. And furious, his father goes into a rage and slaps him across the face. Stunned, the boy runs upstairs to hug his mom, shoving his father out of the room when he comes to apologize. The man can hardly contain his anger, but the truth is he knows that he was wrong, and he storms out of the house to go walk it off. That's when Spike comes up with an idea, and making sure that nobody is watching, he sneaks into the supply shed and sets the place on fire. Running over to the watchtower, he pretends like he's there to watch the gate while the guards put out the flames. But as soon as they're all distracted, he grabs his mom and sneaks her out of the village, determined to find the doctor no matter what it's gonna take. Okay, damn. Who would have thought that in a world full of zombies, Spike's biggest op would have turned out to be his own dad? I mean, you weren't exactly pulling for any Father of the Year awards in the first place, but after your performance last night, I think it's safe to say that you won't be winning it next year either. Well, I've got some bad news for you, Jamie, because it looks like you just f***ed up. Because nothing says father and son bonding time like bringing a 12-year-old kid to an island full of naked rage zombies. I mean, what the actual f***, my guy? I mean, this kid shouldn't even be playing mature-rated video games yet. Despite leading him into another death trap one after another, somehow the two of you actually made it back in one piece, but only after you almost got your heads torn off by a naked zombie caveman. Now you'd think that after a close call like that, the only thing you'd want to do is go back to your wife, apologize for being such an idiot, and promise to never try something like that again. Like in the span of one afternoon, you went from being your son's biggest hero to making the kid want nothing to do with you. Now he'd rather take his chances on a zombie island than spend another minute in your presence. And when that happens, there's really only one thing left to say. Jamie, my boy, you done f***ed up. It isn't until they've reached the top of the first hill when Ilsa realizes that they're on the mainland. and terrified, she immediately says that they need to turn around, but the boy insists that they can't go back. He explains that they're going to find the doctor, and trusting him, his mother reluctantly agrees to at least try. After walking for hours through the open country, they eventually decide to take shelter in an abandoned church. The boy tells his mom to get some rest while he keeps watch, and she replies that he's acting just like his grandfather, impressed with how much her son is actually growing up. Later that night, Spike accidentally falls asleep, leaving him completely defenseless as one of the slow lows starts crawling into the building. He's so exhausted that he can't even sense what's coming until just when it's about to strike, a mysterious stranger appears and pulls the zombie away. Sometime the next morning, the kid jolts awake to find the creature lying dead on the ground. Neither of them have any idea what happened, but the truth is that his mother was the one who saved his life, even though she can't seem to remember how. Grabbing their things, they set off to keep looking for the doctor, worried that more infected could arrive at any moment. Meanwhile, a team of sailors from the patrol boat end up stranded on the island, taking cover in an empty drainage canal as the infected swarm in and start picking them off. The men try their best to escape, stopping every few yards to fight the creatures off with their rifles, but they're quickly overwhelmed and torn apart one after another until there's only 3 survivors left standing. Fighting their way to the abandoned facility, they nervously head into the pitch-black tunnels when suddenly an alpha lunges out of the shadows and grabs one of them by the neck. Lifting him into the air, the zombie tears the man's head off with the entire spine still attached, before using it like a club to beat another man to death. One of them manages to get away, slipping out during the chaos and disappearing into the forest. But with nobody coming to save him, his odds of survival, they're not looking very good. Okay, now that was just embarrassing, and it just goes to show that even modern weapons can't help if they're not used properly. It kind of feels like I'm pointing out the obvious here, but going down into that drainage ditch was like the worst mistake that you could possibly make here. All it did was leave them with only 2 directions to run, while the zombies could swarm down on them from like all sides. And at that point, you might as well just do a backflip into the meat grinder and call it a day. Now, we all know that when it comes to dealing with sprinters, elevation is the name of the game, so before these guys even hit the shore, they should have been looking for some high ground to fall back to. I mean, my ass would have kept going in the raft until they found a better place to land, ideally near some buildings or hills where they could reach higher ground. And if their only choice was to land right there, then the smarter move would have been to climb up onto the walkway and cross to the other side, where they could use the elevated position to hold off the zombies. Now, once they were being chased down the trench, they started running in a completely disorganized way that led to them getting picked off one at a time. But remember earlier when Spike and his dad were being chased by that pack? They did a much better job with only 2 guys and some wooden bows. And it's because they were rotating between providing cover and gaining distance. In the military, this is called bounding, and it's used to maintain continuous pressure on the threat whenever you need to move. So as soon as they hit the trench, they should have split into 2 teams, with one team providing cover while the other team ran, and then repeating the process until they reached safety. Now, for the ones who were able to reach the facility, their odds of survival immediately went up. But if this place doesn't scream boss encounter, then I don't know what does. They still had more than enough firepower to take the alpha down, if they saw him coming, that is, but the problem was they all moved in a straight line with all 3 rifles pointed in the same direction. Now, obviously a better choice would have been to form a triangle, that way they'd be ready for an ambush instead of leaving themselves open for an easy kill. Which brings us to the sole survivor here. First off, it's possible that he already knows about the island, and if that's the case, then that's obviously where I'd be headed. Otherwise, I'd get to the top of a hill and scan for any signs of human activity like smoke on the horizon or man-made shapes like roofs or fences. You'll often smell and hear the other survivors before you can see them, so that's something he's going to want to keep in mind, and if he finds somewhere that looks promising, I'd scope it out from a distance first, just in case they turn out to be cannibals or something like that. Crossing a large open field, the boy and his mother come to a place where they can see the giant Angle of the North standing high up on a hill. Just then he notices another zombie sneaking up on them and takes it down with a single, well-placed shot. More infected are drawn to the noise, forcing them to take cover inside a nearby gas station. They manage to open the door just in time, only to realize that the place is flooded with toxic gas. The zombies are still right behind them, but it doesn't take long before they run out of room, and there's no possible way that they can fight them all. In fact, just when it looks like they're finished, the soldier appears right in the window above them, firing his rifle into the cloud of gas and setting off a giant fireball that instantly cooks every zombie in the building. After the battle, the man introduces himself as Eric, explaining that his team was stranded on the island after their boat sank. But since the entire country is still under quarantine, he knows that nobody will ever come to save them. After getting some rest, the three of them keep heading for the bonfire, where they hear a strange noise coming from an abandoned train. Inside, Ilsa comes across a pregnant infected who looks like she's about to give birth, until finally she pops out a newborn baby right there on the spot. And what's even more surprising is that the baby looks healthy. The second that it's over, the infected woman lunges straight at them, and Eric lights her up without a moment's hesitation. There's a tense standoff as they argue over what to do with the child when all of a sudden a muscular arm reaches down and drags Eric out of the train. It's the Alpha, and after brutally tearing the soldier apart, he jumps down with the man's decapitated head still clutched in his hand. Spike shouts at his mother to run for it as the beast starts charging after them, hitting it with a perfect shot straight to the chest, but it barely even manages to slow him down. Kid hits him with 3 more arrows, but they don't seem to have any effect, and running back into the field, they haven't made it far before the beast chases them down. Just when it looks like it's all over, a strange man suddenly appears from the tree line and fires a blow dart straight into its neck, stopping the creature dead in its tracks. It's the Doctor, and the man explains that he hit the Alpha with a fast-acting tranquilizer, leaving him completely harmless until the effects wear off. The man reaches down and takes Eric's severed head out of its hands, explaining that he calls this one Samson and has been watching him for almost 3 years. The boy introduces himself and his mother, asking the man if he can help with her condition, and the doctor agrees without any hesitation, saying that they need to get out of there before the Alpha wakes up. That was absolutely insane. I think it's safe to say that a lot just happened here, so let's start with our boy Eric first. Now, he might have been a total moron, but at least he ended up being a good meat shield in the end. The thing is, he should have known that more infected would be drawn to the gunfire, so instead of wasting his time focusing on the harmless baby, he should have been getting ready for another attack. If he'd turned around to watch the entrance, he could have caught the Alpha as it jumped down through the opening, and then a few hits to the dome would have been all they needed to take it down. But since Eric got his run ended early, this left Spike with nothing but his bow to solve the problem, and that's when shot placement becomes even more important. He's been trained to aim for the head and heart, but against an Alpha, things are a little different. Headshots are still a good option, especially if you can hit the eye socket and get straight to the brain. The neck works as well because no matter where you hit, it's going to cause major blood loss and suffocation, eventually leading to the Alpha to bleed out. The same goes for his armpits. It's a tough shot to make, but the area is not nearly as protected as his chest or upper back, so a well-placed shot could punch through his lungs or heart. And if all else fails, aiming for his knees or Achilles tendon is still worth it, because if you can't kill it, then slowing it down is better than nothing. The Doctor here brings up an interesting idea that the other survivors aren't trying yet: chemical warfare. They won't have access to sedatives like he does, but what they could try is hemlock, which is a toxic plant that can be found all over the UK, which contains a powerful neurotoxin that eventually causes paralysis and suffocation. If they grind it up into a paste, they can coat a few special arrows in the poison. It won't be an immediate takedown, but if you land a hit and manage to get away, it should gradually weaken the Alpha over time, making it easier to kill during the next encounter. Now, with all of that being said, I'd suggest taking Samson out while they have the chance, but I guess the Doctor has something else in mind. They eventually make it to a riverbank where they see a forest full of bare trees on the other side. As they get closer, Spike realizes that the trees are actually giant totems made out of bones. And reaching the center, they come to a clearing where there's a massive Christmas tree made out of hundreds of human skulls. It looks like calling the Doctor sane was a bit of a stretch, but he explains that it's meant as a monument to honor all those who've died during the outbreak. Now it's time to add their old buddy Eric to the pile, and bringing his head over to the bonfire, the Doctor throws it in a boiler and lets the water melt off of his skin before letting the boy choose where to add him to the monument. The kid explains how they came across the baby and tells the Doctor what's been going on with his mother, but the conclusion he ends up coming to is not that great. Gathering the family together, he regretfully informs them that Ilsa is dying of cancer, and even with all of his knowledge, there's absolutely nothing that he can do. Realizing that he is going to panic, his mother pulls Spike in for a hug while the Doctor hits him with a sedative, making sure that he won't try to stop what happens next. Coming back, the man explains that his mother deserves a peaceful death, and kissing her son goodbye, she leaves him beside the fire as the Doctor leads her away into the forest. Sometime later, the Doctor returns carrying his mother's skull and tells the boy to find a good place for her on the tree. Wrapping it in his shirt, he climbs all the way up and places her at the very top of the pile, turning her to face the sunrise as he says goodbye for the last time. Ultimately, they're rudely interrupted when Samson comes barreling out of the tree line, forcing them to take cover inside of a makeshift underground bunker. But just when it looks like he's giving up, he suddenly reaches straight through the ground and grabs the doctor by the back of the shirt. Thinking quickly, Spike grabs one of the darts from the man's pouch and jams it into the zombie's arms, knocking the creature unconscious and saving his life just in time. The boy does make it back to the village without running into any more trouble, but instead of going back to his old life, he decides to leave the baby outside the gate with a note explaining what happened. He says that he's going back to the mainland to live on his own, promising to come back when he's ready to see them again. Horrified, his father runs to the gate, but the tide is already too deep for him to cross. Another 28 days go by with Spike surviving on his own, until one day when he's attacked by a bunch of infected that chase him into a winding ravine. He runs until he hits a point where a rock slide blocked the road, and with nowhere left for him to go, he turns around to make his final stand. Just then, a mysterious man in a purple tracksuit appears at the top of the wall, followed by an entire squad of multicolored assassins carrying makeshift weapons. It's the kid, Jimmy, from the church all those years ago, and leaping into action, his friends start tearing through the zombies like a messed up scene ripped straight out of the Power Rangers. When the battle's over, Jimmy comes down and introduces himself to Spike, inviting the kid to join their team of zombie-killing ninjas. It's basically a 12-year-old boy's dream, so it looks like Spike finally found his new family. And in the end, everyone learned a valuable lesson. Just because you're trapped on an island full of rage zombies doesn't mean you still can't have a little fun. 28 years later, yay! What a subversive sequel in the long-running zombie franchise that created fast zombies and cinema as we know it. Danny Boyle, you're a mad lad. Interesting style choices, interesting pacing, interesting plot, interesting story. I f***ed with it. You know, I'm so glad that British people don't actually exist, or else this movie would have been really scary. But other than that, I'm sure there's 1,000 different ways that we could have also survived this movie, so if we missed anything, you gotta let me know what they are down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.